The price of copper is knocking on the door of 6-month highs. That's not just the only base metal that's on the way up. As we see what's happening in the markets, John Meyer joins us now, who's a mining analyst and partner at small cap mining specialist SP Angel. John, it's good to talk to you. And I know you've been on about this rise in the copper price recently, but as I said, it's been joined now by gains in zinc and nickel as well. What's going on in the market at the moment?
Well, the market is certainly looking for a V-shaped recovery right now, driven by demand that we're now beginning to see and expect in China, but also driven by supply interruptions, mainly out of Latin America, where the coronavirus is having a pretty significant impact on construction activity and mining activity, with Codelco in Chile in the Atacama area. But also at a number of other mines in Peru and in other parts of Latin America. So, every time there's a supply shock, the price seems to move a bit higher, and every time we see more metal moving out of LME and Shanghai warehouses, again we feel that the market has a more positive mood in its mind. So I think this is what's generally lifting the market. It's certainly climbing a wall of worry, as we say, and I'm looking for significantly higher copper and other metals prices from here.
Just talking about the China side of what's going on, the demand side, what is happening in China that gives you confidence that it's really going to be China that's going to be driving this? What are the Chinese authorities doing to give you confidence?
Well, we had news come out from China Railways, which is a parastatal company. They spent $46 billion on investment in fixed assets in the Chinese railway system in the first half. They suffered a bit in the first quarter. They didn't spend as much money as they normally would, but then they more than made up for that in the second quarter. And so we see this huge investment that dwarfs anything in the Western world. And they've got another 4,400 kilometers of rail track to build through the rest of the year. Of that, more than half of it's high-speed rail. So we expect them to use 550,000 tons of steel just in the rail, never mind the bridges, the gantries, the bolts, the stations that all have to go in on these rail networks, and the wagons and the trains. Let's not forget that. So this is an enormous construction program. A lot of it was planned anyway. There's certainly more stimulus coming into that because it's a good way of getting people employed. We know China have got a problem with unemployment in the migrant labor force, which they're quite worried about because this is a part of the labor force that could cause trouble and dissent, and the Chinese Communist Party don't want any of that. And of course, we've also got at the same time an enormous amount of flooding on the Yangtze River. There are a few people out there suggesting that the Three Gorges Dam might break. I don't go for that myself, but there's about 2,800 kilometers of Yangtze River that is now subject to potential flooding. The city of Wuhan is in danger, and there's another city, I can't remember the pronunciation of the name. They've evacuated 40,000 residents already, many more millions at risk. So I think the Chinese government will get in there and start rebuilding flood defenses, rebuilding parts of cities that are damaged just as soon as the flood waters recede.
Just want to take a look at the price of copper while we're talking about this. 62.07 is where we are at the moment. We've seen this really big rise up recently in the price of copper. We're not too far away from the highs that we saw back in January, where we were, about 63. But if you go back over that, you're then touching levels not seen since April last year. How high is this copper price likely to go, bearing in mind what you've been talking about? There's a lot of things going on here which suggest potentially upside moves from where we are. But it's the degree that I'm more interested in terms of your thoughts on the copper price.
Well, I must admit, I am quite excited about it. I do think there's the potential for the price to spike up to $8,000, $9,000 a ton. And that would be a monumentally big move for copper. Probably it's more likely to go to $6,500, $7,000 over the next year or so. But remember that sales of electric vehicles are looking really strong at the moment. Sales of vehicles in general with combustion engines have collapsed, but actually deliveries and sales of electric vehicles are still very, very good. So given that electric vehicles use so much copper, and then there's all the other infrastructure that needs to go in as well for the charging stations, charging at home, charging stations at motorway services and in streets and shopping centres. That's where the real copper usage will come in, and there's a lot more of that's got to come through into the market.
Well, of course, aligned to this as well are rare earths. I know that you've been monitoring the rare earths market as well. What's happening there, and what's the surprise in terms of moves that we're likely to see from the rare earth minerals area of the mining area?
Well, I've got to say we were surprised to see almost all the Chinese rare earth stocks limit up this morning, and so that tells us that the Chinese investors are expecting something. So we wonder whether they're going to announce some huge offshore wind farm program, maybe in the South China Seas. There's certainly something coming there, and you don't get all these stocks lifting in this way for no reason at all. We know that that sources, or shall we say, supply of rare earths is pretty limited, and in fact is depleting as we speak. And there aren't many. I mean, there are a number of new rare earth mining companies that are looking to bring projects into the market, but they're not happening today, if you see what I mean. So the supply is limited, but the demand is expected to increase. And for each one of these new direct drive offshore wind farms, so they're big windmills, they go up to 12 megawatts each, I think, at the moment, maybe a bit higher. The reason why you use a lot of rare earths in those offshore wind farms is because they're more reliable, they're more efficient, and they work better for the larger capacity turbines. And you can have something like half a ton of rare earths in the permanent magnets sitting on top of one of those windmills. It's an awful lot of metal. It's quite a lot of value, but of course, compared to the cost of installing that windmill in an offshore wind farm, and compared to the cost of servicing that windmill, the price of the neodymium, the praseodymium, the dysprosium, and the terbium is relatively insignificant.
Just finally, while we're talking, we're witnessing gold's price of spot gold go over the $1,800 an ounce level. These are 8.5-year highs, the price of gold. Just showing the gold chart. We've been talking to clients recently about this as this inverted head and shoulders pattern for those that are of a technical bent. And you've got the height of this inversion here, suggesting that we've got a price target of around about 1,820. We're now not too far from there. What are your thoughts on the price of gold, and what is it that's driving this particular area of the market as well? Because if you're getting base metals rising on expectations of demand and so forth, why is gold rising as strongly as it is?
Well, there's a lot of things that seem to be lifting gold at the moment. I mean, the first is dollar weakness and expectations, I think, for longer term dollar weakness as the Chinese renminbi starts to become a stronger currency. Then we've got the Chinese unemployment, potential for trouble there. Flooding on the Yangtze, again, could create major disruption. For me, I'm expecting to see further major financial scandals coming out of Dubai and Singapore. We've already seen problems with oil traders in Singapore, and I expect to see more fraudulent activity exposed by the volatility in financial markets right now. So I think they're certainly expecting more surprises to come out from these two, so we say, poorly regulated financial sectors. And then, of course, coronavirus outbreaks. We are seeing isolated outbreaks and regional lockdowns, and it's not over when it comes to that coronavirus, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay, John, look, we'll leave it there. But thanks for joining us with a quick roundup of what's happening in the mining space with gains for copper, zinc, nickel, and also that rise for spot gold as well. That's John Meyer from SP Angel. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGTV and subscribe to our YouTube channel.